Hi, listeners. We want to tell you about a podcast we're really digging. It's called Christopher Kimball's Milk Street Radio. Every week, they travel the world to find the most fascinating stories about food, including children who harvest cod tongues after school in Norway and a detective who tracks down food thieves. And on Milk Street Radio, you can always find the unexpected. The comedian who ranks apples using an elaborate 100-point system, the secret history of grocery stores, and how to eat your way through Italy. They also interview the most beloved names in food like Jacques Pepin, Sola Aweli, Jose Andres, Jet Tila, Ina Garten, Nigella Lawson, and Padma Lakshmi. Plus, co-hosts Christopher Kimball and Sarah Moulton do live calls with listeners and answer their questions about ingredients, techniques, and culinary mysteries. Like, why roasting a leg of lamb made one caller's oven explode? Ever wonder why your bread won't rise or your souffle falls flat? Chris and Sarah have the answers. You'll also hear from a rotating cast of contributors, including Kenji Lopez-Alt, Cheryl Day, Dan Pashman from The Sporkful, and Alex Ainuz, a French guy cooking from YouTube. Take a listen at 177milkstreet.com/radio or just search your podcast app for Milk Street Radio.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme stewards 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by their natural ecosystems. They're led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of the environment, both can thrive. Westholme's team of rangelands experts and nature managers use a variety of tools to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment, like satellites that address grass health and on-the-ground research. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures that they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. Their cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. The result is a high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
So you don't charm the devil with your rock and roll load. Knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil runs his groove in them rhythm and blues that send. It's gonna get you son in the end.
Welcome back to The Speakeasy. I'm Damon Boelte.
And I'm Sother Teague.
And Greg's out today.
Yeah.
Which is why we have 3 hosts these days, you know?
Yeah.
That way we can keep it going every week.
It ensures that at least one of us will always make it. I think it's
Right.
been working for us pretty well since we started this program.
Yep.
You know, Damon, last week, again, sort of the way the show drops, it just misses the date. But last week, the top 4 from Tales of the Cocktail was announced. So they cut the list down from the top 10 to the top 4. Many of our friends were on the 10 list. So that means that many of our friends are on the top 4 list, many of whom have been on the show recently. And we're really excited for them all. And I can't wait to get down to Tales this year. And just before the show started, you said you may not be able to make it, but man, oh man, I hope you do.
No, it's I would say 80% in favor.
All right.
So we're looking good.
I'd put down a heavy bet on 80%.
Yeah.
I'm a gambling man.
You know, the thing, I got to tell you, I've got some friends who, they're true bon vivants. They've been traveling the world for the last few years, and they'll go and live in Barcelona for 2 months, and then they'll go to like Mexico City for 3 months. You know, and they're currently in the wonderful city of New Orleans. And our old drummer Mike, who lives in Montana now, he was in New Orleans for a couple weeks ago. And so I've had all these people, like non-industry folks, who have been asking me like for recommendations for New Orleans, and you know, I've got this huge list.
Same.
And I got a huge list for pretty much anywhere you want to go.
Same.
But it's been really fun because it's got me really excited about getting back to Tales because I haven't gone in a few years. So
yeah, that's right. The pandemic screwed everything up, and then you couldn't make it down, and yeah,
wasn't there to accept our award last year. That was a bummer, but you know, we'll make up for it this year.
Seven times the bridesmaid, and then finally the bride, and you don't get to walk down the aisle.
I know.
typical. Well, don't forget,
That's
so
life.
if we count this as 2 for me, right, 1 for the show and 1 for Amore Margot's World's Best Spirit selection, that one happened the year that Tales didn't happen. So I didn't get to walk
Oh
down
yeah.
on that one. They sent me the thing in the mail. I was like, oh, hooray,
Right.
I got it. Anyhow, I got no good segue today, but I know you're.
Speaking of really crazily hot places of the United
Oh, that's a
States.
good one. Yeah, crazy hot New Orleans. Let's talk about crazy hot Phoenix. And I know you're a huge gin lover, Damon. You've worked for a bunch of gin brands in the past. Today we've got
Created a few too.
yeah. Well, and you've drank several. Yeah, we got
Yeah.
Tom Giddings and Ryan Lawrence on from Suncliffe Gin, which is a new gin out of Arizona. Thanks for joining us all the way from the burning hot Phoenix, Arizona.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So we got plenty to talk about what's going on with your gin, but I think that first we should talk a little bit about the two of you. What are your roles with Suncliffe Gin, and sort of how did you get this thing going? Because it's new. Like, when did you launch?
We launched just like a couple weeks over 3 years ago. So it was born in 2021. And
I mean, no matter what field of endeavor you're in, I think right in the height of a pandemic is the best time to launch.
Oh, it was really great for. I mean,
you
in
joke,
a lot
but
of ways, our industry's kind of shut down, and so did the spirits industry. So people were making hand sanitizer and had a lot of time to sit back and just kind of chat with us, and we learned a lot, which was an important part of the step because we don't come from a spirits background.
Yeah, so talk to us a little bit about that. Like, what is your background and what made you make the leap into spirits? And not only into spirits, it's not like you just said to yourselves, hey, I want to go work at a bar. You said to yourselves, hey, I want to make stuff that sits on everybody's back bar.
Yeah, exactly. So I had been living in New York for 10 years. I came as a dancer and then had kind of transitioned the storytelling arts into set decorating and production design. So I was working at the Food Network, doing movies, doing the sets for movies, photo shoots, and that's what I was doing and stopped doing in 2020.
I'm originally I was born in South Africa, actually. So, because I know someone's going to ask about my accent and think I'm Australian, but I was born in South Africa. I grew up in London. I also lived in New York for kind of 8 years. I was a photographer. I still take photographs, but that was my predominant career up until like March 5th, 2020, where we kind of hopped on a plane. Ryan, you're from Arizona originally, and we were like, I think this seems like a good time to get out of New York. Something's going on. And we kind of flew to Tucson, and that was kind of the beginning of Suncliffe, really, because we were just sat around. We, obviously no photo shoots were happening, no films were happening. So we were sat at home, drinking a lot of martinis and watching television, like how a lot of people were in the pandemic. And then kind of this led us up to Sedona, really. Maybe you can kind of talk a bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're going for the full story now.
Well, the origin, right?
Origin.
Yeah, we got to get your origins, and then we can get into your gin. Origin to gin.
Yeah. Origin to gin.
Oh, yeah.
Oui. So it was 2020, and my parents had retired to Sedona, Arizona, which is an awesome, beautiful place. And that was great for us. We could get out of town in Tucson and go somewhere. We were so fortunate to have that. So we were sleeping on their roof. It was a very it was the full-on social distancing. We didn't even eat together. We stayed really far apart, but we were forced outside, and that meant that we were doing a lot of hiking, a lot of looking around, appreciating the beautiful nature that we were in. And it was that time of year that the juniper berries had all ripened and had fallen on the ground. So there are these beautiful the same blue as our bottle cap, and on that red earth. So it was quite dynamic while we were hiking. And then we said, I know what those are. Those are juniper berries, and that's what you make gin with. So we made some really gnarly, pretty interesting versions, and then took the best of those kind of gross gins to make Suncliffe gin.
And to begin with, we were literally just putting it in Tupper. We were buying some vodka, throwing some juniper, random things we were picking out and about. and just putting them in like Tupperwares,
Just macerating.
and then like drinking them at home, just playing around. And you're from Northern Arizona originally. You're from Flagstaff, so you kind of had a better idea of the kind of flora and fauna of the area.
That was kind of my first love. My first job was working at a nursery. I did all sorts of scout stuff and forest. That's kind of what you do when you live in the mountains.
Yeah. So sort of a love of foraging and being out in the outdoors, and a desire to maybe get drunk.
Exactly.
Led you to just do some infusions of your own and make some drinks. But then how did you make the leap from like, I'm infusing vodka with foraged items to make a gin of sorts, to now I have a distillery with a big old still and I'm making gin and bottling it?
So that summer, that summer of 2020 was such an unusual one in New York. We drove that summer from Arizona to New York. And it was really the summer of like drinking outdoors. Suddenly everyone was drinking in the park and drinking on the pier and drinking here and there. So everyone was having picnics and barbecues and stuff for their birthdays. So we'd brought a bunch of these ingredients in our car, like these different Arizona things we'd been foraging. And so we would make little bottles and just take them to people's parties and take them to picnics. And people were like, oh, this is pretty. We were just calling it Sedona gin. We just like write Sedona gin on it with a Sharpie. And people were like, oh, this is pretty good. Like, what is it? And then our third business partner, Claire, who at the time was just our neighbor, we would like sit out on the porch again and have drinks in the evening. And then she was like really captivated by the story and kind of was like, well, why don't you make this into a business?
Why don't we?
Yes. Well, exactly. Why don't we make this into? Well, I was like, we will if you join, because the two of us, we're also a married couple. So I was like, that won't work at all. We need a third person. It's going to need to be a 2 against 1 sometimes. So if you come on board, like this might go from just a kind of dream hobby to a reality. And that was the beginning of it getting serious.
The next day she was calling every distillery in Arizona, bottle factories, cork. We just kind of like, what are the pieces of this thing? Let's figure it out.
And as you alluded to earlier, it was kind of an interesting time where a lot of people had more time to talk to us. So we were really, really lucky. We called a lot of distilleries. We called bartenders, like friends, like everything just kind of gave us a lot of advice. And in a time where I think it would have been hard to get attention as such a small, like, oh, we just want to make this many bottles. Like usually you'd be like, whatever, you're behind everyone else. But because kind of people had more time and were more curious, I think that allowed us to kind of get our toe in the door. So yeah, suddenly 9 months later, it was real. We sold our first bottle in Arizona in June 2021.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
And so now though, so in the beginning you were contract distilling, someone was distilling for you, but now you're distilling yourself, correct?
No, we harvest everything ourselves.
Got it.
So we forage all the botanicals in Sedona, and then we drive them up to Petaluma, which is where we distill. And we work very, very hands-on with someone there to kind of do all our batches, and we're there present and kind of super involved. And we're initially very involved with the R&D, but building your own distillery as a small brand is a really easy way to bankrupt yourself, I think.
It's distilled in Petaluma, California?
Yes.
Dude, I live in Marin County. How do I not have a sample bottle?
Are you there now? Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're actually driving up there next week, so.
Well, let's hang out.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, we'll swap. We'll make sure to get you one for sure.
Well, yeah, because I'm really, bummed is the wrong word, but I wish Damon had a bottle in his hand, because I know, and I'm trying to show him on the camera, some of the unique things. Look at this punt in the bottom. It's kind of like orange in color. It's sort of it looks like a mountaintop or something. He was mentioning the
Sedona is
colorblind.
like...
See, Damon's the design guy. I'm colorblind and kind of don't care. This could come in a milk carton. But I know that there's lots of things here that he would speak to.
Yeah, because it's kind of like a terracotta, burnt orange kind of hue, and it's if you've been to Sedona, have you ever been to Sedona, Sother?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's breathtaking. When the sun hits the sides, when the sun hits the cliffs.
When the sun hits the cliff.
Yeah. So and then there's that really crazy church that's like built into the side of the mountain. That's like really like just kind of like when you drive in, you're like, whoa. It's like mid-century modern kind of like, it looks like a something from outer space. But yeah, and then you've got kind of like your turquoise and coral colorways, so it's very, very Southwest. I love the packaging. I've seen it on the website, and yeah, I'm looking at it right now actually, and it's very cool. And as someone who's from kind of the Southwest, from Southwest Oklahoma, Texas, and spent a lot of time in New Mexico and Arizona, it's like it's a really well, it's to me like juniper is such a I've always been drawn to it as well, and like I said, I've created a few gin brands and also worked in it a long time. But also like it, you being from South Africa, like that was a shocker for me. I went there to launch Brooklyn Gin in South Africa. I didn't know what the spirits industry was like there, but gin is huge in South Africa, and was that something that was inspiration? Were you of age to drink when you were living there?
Definitely not. I left as a young kid, but
Yeah.
growing up in England and growing up in London, and I worked in bars and restaurants through college and all that kind of stuff. Like, I feel like gin and tonic, I mean, nothing kind of gets more stereotypical as an English kind of drink, right, than the G&T. So that was definitely kind of part of my kind of thought process growing up. And it was interesting for us. We went back in to London maybe 4 or 5 years ago before we'd started this, and the kind of gin renaissance was so wild. Even you'd go to just like a small country pub and suddenly they'd have 12 different types of craft gin, and it's served to you in like a goblet with garnishes. And definitely that kind of Spanish influence. And it was just really interesting seeing how it had gone from kind of your like dusty back of the cupboard like thing to suddenly like really kind of popularized. So that was really, really interesting.
Yeah, and there's actually, I always say that rum is probably the most outlaw spirit there is, because as long as it's made from some sort of sugar base, it can be made anywhere in a billion different styles. Gin can be, I mean, obviously it's kind of, it has to have juniper influence, but like as far as the botanical makeup, you can really go any direction with it.
Right.
And that's why you see so many different gins. It's like on the back bar, it's like at my bar at Grand Army, it's like we probably have like 30 different gins, and people have asked, they're like, like, why do you have so many gins? I'm like, they're actually all different. And it's a difference of when you taste it on its own, and then once you mix into a cocktail, I mean, they can really transform whenever it finds the influence of other ingredients, even just water, opening up the botanicals. It's a really, and that's what it is. It's a botanical spirit. It's, I've worked in gin for a long time. Everyone thinks of me as like the Fernet Branca guy, but I was like, you know what? They're both botanical spirits. Mm-hmm. So like, if you think about it that way, it's like our buddy Willie Shine, who was working with, with Jägermeister forever. I had him on the show one day, and he was like, let's go get a beer afterwards. And I'm like, well, yeah, we are. So he was telling me, he was like, you know what? This is when I was the global brand ambassador for Brooklyn Gin. He was like, what you should do? It's like, don't consider yourself, like, try to be like a master of gin, become a master of botanicals. And I was like, that was like a real pivotal moment in my career. And so like, I love that, that you're finding local juniper and local. What are some of the other things that you're putting in your gin? I think the listeners would like to, and so would we.
So yeah, that is what really sets our gin apart from a lot of gins. We have 2 ingredients that were approved by the FDA for this specifically that hadn't been used, at least commercially, for anything that was approved by the government. So it has 3 species. Yeah. We did not get ayahuasca approved. We tried, but it didn't work. Okay. So that's not in this.
Listen, at least you tried. All right.
Yeah. There's 3 species of juniper. What's kind of really special about Sedona is it is in a really unique climate. And 3 species of juniper overlap in that canyon. So we use those 3, and their taste is a lot more fruity and kind of earthy, almost bready. One tastes a lot like pistachios. So those 3 right off the bat set it apart from most junipers, using common juniper as the main kind of backbone. Then we support it with ponderosa pine bark, which I can go on and on about. But the long story short, and I'll make it short, but The bark contains vanillin. So that growing up in Flagstaff, people come to visit. It's also beautiful, but we'd tell tourists to go smell the trees, and they'd be like, "That's so lame," but okay. And then they would be like, "Wow, it smells like chocolate ice cream or butterscotch or vanilla." Everyone had their own kind of interpretation, and every tree has a slightly different pheromones that kind of make it a little bit more one or the other, but it has that vanillin. So this gin has almost a resinous butterscotch note to it, which really softens and rounds out and kind of appeals to non-gin drinkers. It kind of softens all those traditional green spiky notes a bit. There's also manzanita berries, which were also approved by the FDA for this. Those are a little scrubby brush. They have really beautiful, like kind of lacquered red bark. And the berries, they're shit to eat, but they're kind of like a stone with skin. They taste like apple candy. So they're not related to apples, but they kind of have a zesty apple note, a flavor. You can't really chew them or bite them, but when you put them in your cheek on a hike, they give you kind of this candy flavor. So that works really well for infusing and gives the gin kind of a nice fruit note. And we also have Western elderflower, and all of those we wild harvest from the region.
Thanks.
Yeah, I've been nosing it, since you heard me pop the bottle and pour it. I haven't sipped it yet, but I also just finished up NOLA Spirits Comp. They sent me samples. I tasted through 80-something samples of spirits in the past week. So my
take a break.
My vocabulary is a little bit fried. But I was definitely noting something savory, like it's got a savory quality on the nose, which I don't expect when I smell gin,
and I think that ponderosa pine bark, the kind of tannins from the bark can read a little peppery, a little savory. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we definitely kind of get that feedback. And going back to what you were saying about European gins and earlier in terroir and stuff, like I think that was really a huge inspiration for us, right? Like I feel like we have seen that more traditionally in European gins that really focus on everything is foraged from this one island or from this small area, and kind of we were really inspired to kind of recreate that, but with Arizona, which people who don't live here think of it as a hot, dusty desert, but actually it's one of the most kind of biodiverse states, in the USA actually. So it's great to kind of be able to shine a light on that too.
Yeah,
that's very green.
I would not have thought that. When you're out there, I have a question. When you're out there foraging for this stuff, how romanticized is that term, and how like realistic is that term, and then how sustainable is that process? Right now, for the listener, right now you're only, as far as I can tell, you're only available New York, Arizona, California. Is that right?
That's true.
Right. So
we ship on our website to 48 states, I think. 40 something states.
So it's gettable, and we'll talk about that, and we'll make sure we put links for that in the show notes. But so you're pretty small right now. What about if you suddenly become very large? Is foraging still going to be the way you go, or are you going to have to like grow and harvest? Where does that balance shift?
Yeah, definitely. So we are learning the cycle of the trees still in our third year. Each tree is on its own 2 to 3 year cycle.
Right.
So we are learning about all of that. And
I think it just was a surprise to us. We kind of went to all these trees year one, and then, we came back the second year and we're like, oh, hang on, juniper hasn't grown on this. And we discovered it's actually kind of a 2 to 3 year life cycle on some of the trees. So kind of getting our head around that's been really, really interesting. But we've kind of learned how to, the forest is the Coconino National Forest, I think, is the largest, if not one.
Well, yeah, the forest is a large, dense forest. We have permits to harvest on Forest Service land. They know what we're doing, and it's plentiful. And gin, we're not distilling the berries. We don't need volumes for distilling of the berries. It's mostly kind of tea. I mean, I'm sure you understand how gin is made, vapor distilling. So we don't need a huge volume. Once we grow, of course, there's a lot of berries in the forest. We can't really farm them, but they're definitely, there's a huge forest of them and they're available.
And there's no competition because it's just like a waste product. There's no one else trying to use them. So
that's lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some ants eat them, but
just certainly Damon knows and I know as well, but just for edification of our listener, talk a little bit about vapor distilling and what the difference is.
Yeah. So we start with a base spirit. For Suncliffe, we use corn, which is also quite unique for a gin, but I felt like it made more sense. Well, we love martinis and it makes it quite smooth, and it's an American spirit, so I felt like corn was the choice to make. And then you basically heat it up in a big onion-shaped copper pot, and then inside that, in either the tube or in that pot section, is like a big silk tea bag that holds all of the botanics in a certain order. And then as the spirit is heated up, it turns into a gas and passes through these plant materials and takes on the essence without any of the color, and then redistills.
Yeah, I think people assume, as you said, kind of that everything's just kind of soaked in it, that things are macerated. But yeah, it's just kind of essentially, it's just the vapor. Yeah,
and a
the
lot of
steam that
people I
passes
find
through.
think that gin is made like wine, but with juniper berries.
Yeah, no. Yeah, fermentation over distillation.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the difference is, as you just said, maceration would be, say, your tea bag floating in your hot water to make your tea. This is vapor, meaning you would have your water boiling beneath a tea bag, and the steam goes through the bag itself and gets recondensed into a liquid. And that's sort of the difference between vapor distilling and
Thank you.
maceration.
You put that nicely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Concise.
Well, just trying to help out the listener. And then, you guys are obviously still relatively small, relatively new, out there scratching it out and doing it. And we love that. Like we champion small brands and things like that. But you are working on a few things that are pretty cool, or at least working with some people who are doing pretty cool things. Talk a little bit about the Dig Deep Navajo Water Project and how you guys are affiliated.
So Dig Deep and the Navajo Water Project is a really cool project. My mom, when she retired in 2020, she had worked a lot of her career on the Navajo and Hopi reservations, helping kids with visual disabilities. So she had seen the differences, the real life differences that Dig Deep was making in the families that she had hands-on experiences with. So we knew it was a true company, because there are a lot of scams involving some sort of the native, like people saying they're giving money and actually are stealing it. There's not a lot of
yeah, I mean, like anything,
legal.
there's people, you have to do your groundwork, because people, I mean, anyone wants you to donate money to them, so you want to make sure it's going to a good cause. And yeah, Dig Deep's great. They kind of connect families on the Navajo Nation to running water, families that need it most. I think there's a crazy amount. It's several million households in America don't actually have access to running water, and that skews like very heavily towards the Native community.
Right.
Yeah,
And so what's what's the tie-in? How's it? You guys donate to this through some percentage?
We saw it was such a good program to be involved with. And then a friend of ours actually turned out to be the CEO and founder of Dig Deep. So we were like, this is so cool. We want to get involved. So on our website, we try to give it all of our merch. Jesus.
Yeah, tongue twister. Basically, on our website, we have a merchandise section. So we'll rotate that around. We'll have t-shirts, caps, pins, all that kind of stuff. And 100% of proceeds from all of the merchandise sales are donated annually to Dig Deep.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm. So yeah, go and buy some
get a Suncliffe
caps.
Yeah, I saw you got a cool looking candle on there. Some other neat that smells like the gin, I assume. It said juniper. That's pretty cool.
So yeah, that's our connection.
We're always trying to fill that out so that stays kind of active, and we want to be inspired and in that for that as
and
well.
It gives us a way to collaborate with local makers as well. Like, for example, you said the candles. That was like a really cool way to collaborate with a kind of queer female-owned candle company here in Phoenix. And, we were inspired. Yes, we didn't want it to smell like the gin, but we wanted it to be like evocative of a lot of the ingredients that are in it. So it's juniper, cedar, musk, kind of gives that Southwest. So yeah, it's a cool way for us to also collaborate with other local makers and shine a light on what other people do, outside of just the spirits world, which obviously is we're collaborating with people in that a lot too.
I mean, that's awesome, and it's also great that you're tying it in with another LGBTQ owned business, because your business is that as well. Um, and I can't think of one. I don't know if Damon's deeper into the gin world than me, but is there another LGBTQ owned gin company that exists right now? Are you guys pioneering that section?
Well, I mean, for us, it's been really exciting. Like from the outset, like even when we were like designing the bottle, we were thinking of ways to kind of make the product unique. You know how you said it's kind of has this very like evocative of the Southwest with those reds and the little mountain that's like Bell Rock. We wanted to lean into the mysticism. It has this kind of red-ish look. So on the shelf, it already kind of stands out compared to, gins that people think of as being blue and green. It feels very welcoming, very inviting, because we feel that historically gin can feel potentially a little alienating.
Oh yeah,
like it has that apothecary.
Gin's a polarizing spirit, like
totally. It feels very Mad Men 1950s, maybe not very accessible or shareable. So that was something kind of going into it that we were super aware of, as well as kind of wanting to highlight, other queer businesses, queer bars. And I think one of the things we're working on at the moment. So each year for June Pride Month, which we are in currently, we donate 10% of our sales nationwide. And this year is going to ACLU's LGBTQ rights organization. So that's something else we do to kind of, give back as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's fulfilling to be able to give back to communities that you're part of and that have, lifted you up and gotten you to the place that you are. I'm the same with all my businesses. And frankly, we're the same here on the show. That's what we're all about. None of us are going to make it if we don't all make it, right?
Yeah. A rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, I say that.
I just got this phrase. We were in San Diego. As you mentioned, we're in California. We just launched there in February. And there's someone mentioned that quote to me.
It's
and I guess
on the top of Ironside.
Oh, right. And it just it's really stuck in my head. I keep thinking about it. I love it. It's so fun. Yeah. But it's so true, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's literally and physically true.
And you did a recent collaboration also with another local company, Del Bach, which is a whiskey company out of Arizona. You've got this whiskey barrel aged gin, right? It's the mesquite, or it's the mesquite casks from Whiskey Del Bach, right? You tell me about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe you can just talk about the collaboration a bit.
Yeah, it's I've known the founders, Amanda and Stephen Paul, daughter and father duo, and I've known Amanda for a really long time. We've kind of grew up together in Arizona, and then she went to NYU and I went to New York as a dancer, so we had this similar path. And then she moved back to Tucson and started Whiskey Del Bach with Stephen. And so I've just always been really inspired by their story. When I moved back to Tucson, I was kind of thinking, I'd go work at the distillery with Amanda. It was kind of my plan. And she, when we ended up starting this, was super supportive of us through this and gave us a lot of really good advice. And so this Solstice Gin
nice.
Is a really amazing opportunity to collaborate with them. So we take, it's sort of let me go back a little bit. This was the second Solstice. The first one was kind of an accident where we had more juice than glass. So I was like, okay, let's throw it. There's a barrel over there. Let's see what that does for like a few hundred bottles. And it was delicious. So that was kind of a funny, happy accident. It worked well. And then the next year we led with a little more intention, approached Del Bach more about this because they would be the dream company. And they said yes. So we used 3 of their Dorado, which is the mesquite smoked cask. And then we used 4 of their original, which is not mesquite smoked, but still that cowboy whiskey. And this stuff's amazing. It's like just 3 months and it totally changes everything. It has a lot of sandalwood, ton of violets, grilled stone fruit, nothing that either of the parents really have, but together it's made this really, really cool thing that we're like really excited to repeat this year.
Yeah,
so
the alchemy of barrels is a fascinating world to be in, right?
It is.
It's been really well received. Yeah, we just did a limited edition run of 600 bottles, but solstice, we kind of tend to launch it just ahead of the winter solstice. And for us, it was just kind of an interesting way to kind of play into producing something, that's a little more wintry. But yeah, it's been a huge success. I think we actually only have like one case of this one left.
Yeah, it's done.
But yeah, really excited for next year, and kind of has opened us up to some private barreling, which is really interesting and something we hadn't necessarily considered, the idea of private barrel picks of gin, but we've had quite a lot of people approach us. So that's also really fun and opening us up to potential collaborations with kind of other Arizona makers, as well as kind of other makers potentially in California and stuff. So
we've passed our bottles that we use for this down to a local beer maker. So the story gets recycled, and then I think we're doing something with some honey, and so the barrel world is very opens up a lot of.
Sorry. Yeah, you said bottles. You meant barrels. So you used the barrels.
Yes.
Second use, and then the barrel went to someone who's making a beer and putting the beer in the barrel. So now the beer is influenced by the whiskey and the gin and the barrel itself.
Exactly.
Totally. Yeah. AZ Wilderness. It's a great kind of brewing company here based out of Phoenix. So they do a lot of kind of
that's a lot of fun.
Really interesting kind of esoteric stuff. Yeah.
Well, I've been sipping on this one now. Let's talk about drinking it. Tell us a little bit about the days when you were infusing vodka with things you foraged and taking it to parties. How were you then drinking it, and how are you introducing it to your friends? And then how do you drink and introduce Suncliffe to your friends?
Martinis was how we started. It was a really, again, I think we didn't know that much about cocktails to begin with. So we were like, just stir it with some ice and put a bit of vermouth in, and that seems good. And, I feel like there's such a martini boom at the moment. Everyone we knew was kind of very into the martini. So that's kind of how we started it. And definitely kind of when we were introducing it at parties and stuff, I feel like that's how we were doing it. But now, there's so many different ways.
Yeah, we drink a lot. I tried 3 Suncliffe cocktails yesterday. We live in Tucson, by the way. We're just doing some market visits in Phoenix. I had 3 Suncliffe cocktails yesterday that totally blew me away. Just a totally different take on it. It's, but yeah, I'm more of a spirit forward. But this bee's knees yesterday slapped. It was a good bee's knees. It had blood orange, and that's my least favorite drink. When someone at a restaurant, they're like, "Oh, we love your gin. We've made you a bee's knees." I'm like, "Oh, great. Sugar water and lemon juice." But, it worked. And I love the bartending community here. They're so supportive of each other, and they're always kind of rethinking stuff. And it's a really awesome
environment.
environment.
I just think it's been really, putting it out into the world. I mean, it's just so fun seeing exactly like how other people create with it. We do this annual cocktail competition here in Phoenix called the Suncliffe Showdown. That's hosted by this amazing space called the Churchill. And we kind of invite, originally it was just from, it kind of was very Phoenix focused and has kind of spread to Arizona. And I'm hoping we'll kind of bring in California next time, but we kind of invite people to kind of create a cocktail. There'll be a different theme. It's kind of, you know, inspired by nature or like something around you. And they kind of create these submissions, and then they, you know, we pick like 10 finalists and they present their drinks. And that is always so amazing to us. Like the thought, and, you know, people are, you know, you'll have someone who's making this super unusual twist on like a coffee Negroni, but then you'll have someone who's like infused their own bell pepper vermouth. You know, it's just like so fun with us seeing like what people create, and it's, we're always being surprised and kind of delighted by.
Yeah, you think you've seen it all, and then
you know, but then also I'll be at a tasting and we're just pouring it, you know, in a store to customers, and then we're just drinking it like neat out of a paper cup. And sometimes I like doing that too, you know.
Sure. Well, that shows that it's got range. Listen, it seems to me, I'm not here to give you any ideas to do more work, but it seems to me that you could have your competition in Arizona, California, and then do it in New York, and then the winner of each has to go head to head, and you got East Coast, West Coast situation happening.
Okay,
and
I
then
love
Damon
that
actually
idea.
the judges.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
yeah,
done.
I mean, there we go. In the
Sign
fall,
here.
it is something we were thinking about doing this fall in New York, actually, just
Uh-huh.
kind of, you know, because we haven't done a competition over there, and like New York is a really exciting market for us. Obviously, it's like the most competitive and like exciting, and you know, things are beginning to really grow for us. So, you know, it's always interesting, you know, to be in a state where you're not necessarily like a hometown hero spirit anymore.
Sure.
And kind of building those stories and kind of sharing them. And obviously there's so many talented bar people from the bar world in New York. So I think, yeah, we'd love to do that. Please. Okay, sign up. You can judge, please. That's great.
I just volunteered you, Damon. Sorry. I'm always finding work for us to do. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. Like bartenders are attaching themselves because they find it interesting and delicious and useful in cocktail making, and that's usually a good avenue to get to the consumer. Do you have sort of advocates out there for you? Do you have ambassadors? What's the next step for the business? I always like to talk about the business side of stuff.
Totally. I mean, 100% in Arizona, like that was how the brand built. We were, like we got bartenders excited about it because we just started by going to the bars, we naturally went to just as customers. So the story was very authentic. People got very excited. It wasn't like we were just breezing in being like, we're in Arizona. They're like, oh no, we've seen you come in here drinking before. So, the bar community in Arizona really, really got behind it. And it spread because of that. Someone would go into one particular bar, say Valentine in Phoenix, and they'd see it and then they'd be like, oh, we want this on our back bar. Like people got really passionate about it, and then obviously exactly informing the customer, and suddenly it's going on menus and people are reading Suncliffe, and that's exactly how it spreads. And for us, that's so important. And I feel like, in California, we're really lucky. We just launched there with our new distributor in February. So it's super, super early, but we've already done a market trip to LA, and we did a really fun event with Thunderbolt, which is obviously an amazing bar over in LA. And Mike was great, and like collaborating with them and seeing what they were doing and getting all their staff excited about it. And we're going up to San Francisco. PCH, Pacific Cocktail Haven, just put us on the menu up there, which is awesome. We've never even been to San Francisco yet. So like for them to kind of get behind a kind of relatively small brand and champion us is super exciting, and can't wait to go there. And I think on the West Coast, we are building that. And again, in New York, we are kind of looking into that more official brand ambassador role, especially for California and New York, which is harder for us to be in constantly. But it's a kind of a scary world, and like passing the baton, and kind of what that might mean.
Well, I think you could still establish yourselves as the face of the business. Look to maybe Forge Gin as an example. Simon Ford is definitely the face of that gin, but he can't be everywhere, so he has his ambassadors that represent the gin, but they also represent him, right?
Right.
So that's the methodology. You just got to get people who are true acolytes to what you are and what you do and your product, and get them out there, getting it in front of people and getting it in their hands and in their glasses, which is the most important part, right?
Totally.
I'm sipping on this gin. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. Again, even though I've been tasting hundreds of tiny little bottles of booze this past week. Damon, I wish you could have some. Oh, it's
I know.
taking
Well,
some,
Damon, please give us your details, and we'll make sure you get a bottle of both ASAP. And
Let's go to the distillery.
Okay, yeah.
Probably
if you guys are visiting up there, you should visit Damon.
We will for sure.
Have a drink with the man. We used to be a live radio broadcast and podcast where we all sat together in a single room in New York. And, since the pandemic, we've been doing it like this, which is certainly great for the show and great for having guests on who aren't in the city itself. But man, nothing beats hanging out right over the table and having a drink together. Especially,
of course, that's like our favorite. I mean, that's our favorite thing to do. It's always such a pleasure to kind of sit down and taste with people and get their feedback and just hear the words they use and kind of have that like shared experience.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely get together when you're up here. Also, I tend to troll Craigslist a lot looking for guitars, and I keep finding stuff in Arizona, so I need to get down there anyway.
Okay.
I'm a lefty guitarist, so finding left-handed instruments is really difficult. So I'm like constantly like looking around the whole country. So
it's a treasure
I keep finding cool stuff there, and I'm like, what's going on in the lefty instrument world in Arizona?
Yeah, a lot of lefties in Arizona.
I guess so.
We've just gotten a text message from my dad, who is also a huge Craigslist troll.
Yeah.
He sends us a couple things every day of something really weird he finds in the
from the free section. It'll be like a pile of cement bricks, or like a disused fireplace, or like 10 spools of yarn or something. But yeah.
One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yeah, but yeah,
Well,
get
yeah.
down here to Arizona. People
Definitely.
are, again, just having been in California, we were speaking to Anthony Schmidt from like CH and False Idol and stuff, and he had just been kind of on a pop-up here kind of education thing with like Jason Asher, who I know you've had on the podcast before, and he said he had come and just been so kind of impressed and inspired by the Phoenix bar community and the kind of solidarity between them all, which is also obviously really nice to hear from people outside. You know, when you think of San Diego as being like such a big kind of food and beverage, that they're kind of coming to our state and kind of taking something home with them, that's also great to hear, right?
Yeah,
So
we love that.
the
We
number
love
one
being a part of that.
The number one pizza guy in the United States lives in Arizona.
Oh yeah,
Pizzeria Bianca, right?
we were meeting with him.
Oh yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's a great spot.
There's lots going on there. Also, Phoenix has a really amazing amount of like retro bowling alleys. They're not retro to be retro. They're old.
They just haven't been knocked down.
Like candlepin bowling. Love that.
Yeah.
No, and like the state is so beautiful, as you said earlier. You know, you've got from. I mean, as an outsider, for me, someone who didn't grow up, it's just so inspiring being up from the Grand Canyon to like Flagstaff down through like the amazing rocks of Sedona to the deserts of Tucson. And, you know, it's just like a very varied and kind of exciting place. So yeah, everyone should get here and get some guitars while they're here too. So.
Wait a couple months. Maybe.
Yeah.
Unless you like it really hot, which some people do.
Oh my God.
It's easier to.
Yeah, my yearly trek to New Orleans, where I used to live, I lived there for 3 years, but my yearly trek to New Orleans in July for Tales of the Cocktail is always, it's blistering. You know, everybody has their Tales of the Cocktail advice: drink water, don't drink every drink that's handed to you, like do this, do that. One of my pieces of advice is bring 5 times more socks and underwear than you think you're going to need, because you're going to sweat a lot.
Yeah, we haven't made it down there yet, but I'm excited.
I was about to say, let's tie that in. Are you fellas going to be down in New Orleans for Tales of the Cocktail to maybe show off your product?
Not this year. We haven't kind of, again, you know, with all these things, whether it be, I heard you guys on a previous episode just talking about BCB, where you just were, and like Tales and those things. You know, for sometimes it's, you know, as smaller brands, it's like finding out, like weighing up like how you can make it, you know, like the economics of it, right? Like what we can do to invest and what's the kind of return on that, like how to kind of sneak in as a smaller guy and compete with the big guys, you know? So I think we definitely, something we've thought about last year. And again, a lot of the bartenders and like bars from Arizona have been like celebrated at Tales. So we've kind of spoken to a few bartenders who've been redcoats or nominated or whatever to kind of build with them. So maybe that's a goal for 2025.
Oh, it's definitely a goal. And I think once we kind of get more comfortable in the 3 states we're in now, that there's 7 more states right after that kind of come in the natural progression. So I think when we're in a few more states, it would make sense to be have a more national.
Yeah, I mean, you can go pretty guerrilla down there. You know, lots of brands, smaller brands, typically you'll see them take on, you know, like a nice apartment or Airbnb or something, and they'll just set up hours that is, you know, we're going to be here tasting martinis today with our gin from 3 to 5 or whatever, and it's just sort of open call, and people just pass through, and then you can hand them your merch and your printed materials and things like that, and just get in front of people, you know, just show them that it exists.
That's it.
We have done that like guerrilla style with like a trench coat at BCB for the past 2 years. So
oh look, here's a small 4 ounce. Like enjoy.
And Arizona Cocktail Weekend. We're here. We're not officially here, but we are
always around.
Present.
Yeah. We're not officially here. We wish we were. One day we will be. Right. With your help, one day we'll be official.
Exactly.
Well. Gents, let the listener know where they can follow along with your antics and keep up with what's going on with Suncliffe Gin, and where they can then get a hold of some. You said you can ship it out, and we'll put all this in the show notes as well. But you got social media, etc.
Yeah, so our Instagram is at Suncliffe Gin, SUNCLIFFE gin.com, as we spoke about earlier. Sometimes that silent E on the end gets people. So yeah, at Suncliffe Gin, that kind of, we post all our events and all our kind of cool new bar collaborations and product collaborations there. And then our website, which is suncliffegin.com. We have our merchandise, which we spoke about earlier, with all the proceeds going to Dig Deep. And then also, we have you can buy bottles directly. And I think we can ship to 40-something states. As you know, like state laws are so complicated. So there's always a couple you can't reach, but that's been really exciting for us. Kind of, even if we can't go into a shop and buy it in Colorado, whatever, you can go online and get it and send it to friends as gifts or order it yourself. So that's great. And we have both SKUs. There are still some of the barreled available online as well. So
yeah, I might jump online and snag one of those for myself.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's been really great chatting with you about Suncliffe Gin as we wrap up this episode of the Speakeasy. I have a couple things that I need to announce. One, we've got a new thing for our Patreon. For all of our Patreons out there, we're growing that segment. For all of our top tier Patreon, what do you call them? Users? Patreons. Our top tier Patreons?
Patrons.
We're partnered up with Shaker and Spoon, who I work with a lot and we've worked with in the past. And now our top tiers will get a kit every month of a cocktail, right? So that means they'll get a kit that has everything needed to make 4 copies of the same cocktail over and over, everything needed except the booze, right? So you have to supply your own booze. We can't mail that stuff. And that's a pretty cool perk, I think, for Patreon. So go check that out. And then Greg, who couldn't be here today, wanted me to remind you that his After Dark Confessions, this is a great thing that he does at a bar called Someday in Brooklyn on the 27th from 7 p.m. till 10. He shows up dressed as a Catholic priest, the room full of bar patrons, hopefully getting a little tipsy, write down their confessions anonymously, and then he reads them off to the audience. And the ones that get the most applause can then either step forward and name themselves and not be anonymous anymore and get a drink. I think their bar tab gets covered. I could be wrong. Or they can remain anonymous and not claim the prize. Pretty cool, pretty fun. I got to go to one. It was really hilarious. So highly recommend going and checking out Someday Bar in Brooklyn on the 27th from 7 to 10 to see After Dark Confessions with Father Greg. But that's all we've got for the Speakeasy this week. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with us and tasting this gin. And do go and visit Damon when you're up there. I think you guys have a good time together.
We will. We'll make sure we get your details. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, this has been fun talking about. I love the Southwest, and so it is endlessly inspiring. So it makes perfect sense that you would be inspired to use those ingredients that grow wild there to put into this gin. That it's cool to represent a state in a region of the United States through a spirit. So really cool stuff, guys. Thanks again for being on the show today. That's it for the Speakeasy this week. Until next week, cheers, y'all.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
This is a big glass of gin.
I'm Lou Bank.
And I'm Greg Benson.
And this is an ad for Ancestral Agave Syrup, the critically acclaimed award-winning syrup that helps gringo bartenders better make margaritas,
Wait,
Negronis,
Lou, hold
and
up.
Oaxacan
Wait,
old
are you just...
fashions.
This is how you start your podcast.
What?
It's not an ad for Ancestral Agave Syrup.
Well, of course it is. I'm just cutting costs by not paying writers to make something new. I'm just using an old script.
You pay writers?
That's some kind of jab?
No, I'm just saying that...
What are you saying?
Well, look, we've got this amazing syrup that's made in an ancestral manner, cooked down from the sap of the agave, harvested the way these families would to make pulque. It's a quality product. It deserves a quality presentation.
Yeah, okay, hang on. Ancestral agave syrup is made by real families following traditional methods. Unlike the industrial Blue Weber syrup you get everywhere else, Ancestral is cooked down from aguamiel harvested from Salmiana in Hidalgo, Mexico. It is the grade A Vermont maple to the sticky diner syrup you've been using for your cocktails. Ingredients matter, both in how your cocktail tastes and how you treat the earth. Ancestral is better for both. Is that good?
Sure. Or maybe confusing instead of cheesy. Look, just visit ancestralagave.com to learn more and to order your world-class agave syrup today.
And we'll call that a wrap. Catch you next ad, Greg.
Hasta pronto?
Ancestral Agave Syrup. Available online at ancestralagave.org and wherever Greg and Lou are able to coerce store owners into carrying it.
So you don't charm the devil with your rock.
The Speakeasy is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Food and drink radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
It's gonna get